Excellent. So here we are. This is my final episode for this season of Stephen Has Questions. Whee! So I'm gonna have to clean this up later because Don will get mad at me. But you know, I figured it was some sort of exciting thing to whee. No, but I mean, really, like it's crazy that this is episode number 30 something of these that I've recorded in like a month. And with most of them, they average like an hour and a half. So, that's math, but it's a lot of hours in there. Um, so I'm kind of amazed to have come to the end of this from just kind of this idea to actually having done it. Now I've got to do a little bunch of little editing things for it, but hopefully I'll have it up and running soon enough. So as I did not say in the early ones, and I am saying now, uh, you know, half the reason people do these are to make them people aware of their own stuff, and that's certainly a good impetus for me being an independent artist. So I will be inserting commercials later on. Uh, just trying to sell some stuff, make you aware of it. If nothing else, I'll keep them short, and hopefully they won't be too annoying. If they are annoying, oh well, it's my thing. I get to do that. So anyway, tonight we are with Tony, who I know through my mother. Oddly enough, they're friends, and we'll start with my question, and then we'll kind of go into why we're here. So, Tony, what was the first thing as a kid that you got really into, like, the thing that you wanted to like, know everything about?
I think it was Mario.
Oh, okay,
That was back when Mario 3 first came out, and they had a whole Hollywood movie about it coming out, the Wizard.
that's cool. I was. It's funny because I was never a console gamer, except I did have one of the Nintendos, and I did play the Mario, and I had the little Game Boy,
Ah,
and so I played that stuff. Which if you've ever just kind of related to that, if you've ever get a chance to watch the Tetris movie, it's way better than it has any right to be. Like it's kind of shocking that it's as enjoyable as it is.
I've not actually seen that.
Yeah, it's really worth it. It's cool. It's I mean, there's a certain amount of fictionalization to it, but I think the bulk of it's accurate, and yeah, yeah. I really enjoyed that Game Boy. I kind of want to go back and get another one at some point. Although I guess I can run the emulation for it on my deck. Mostly just because I got to this one level in Ultima, the Game Boy Ultima, and I think it was glitched or something. I never got past it. So anyway, um, so you're a Brony, which
Yes.
is really it's cool. It was funny because from the outside, from where I sat, it was definitely kind of a wow, that's a really interesting and strange thing. And I started really kind of thinking about it, and and in relation to like furries and other sorts of things that are like that. And the general conclusion with the people I know and with my wife and my friends, it's like, you know what? Who are we to judge anything about anybody? But also, like, I'm all for anything that helps people have an architecture and a framework for interacting. So, can you tell me how did you get there? How did you?
Well, I also thought, when I first heard about it, I thought, well, of course, this is ridiculous. And then I think I saw something online. I was downloading something, and it had a top downloads, and one of them was a pony fanfic that had been downloaded something like 20 million times. And I said, no, that is not a joke. That is a legitimate phenomenon
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you don't get jokes downloaded 20 million times. And so I looked about this, and it was done by someone named Lauren Faust, who had also done Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends and a couple other cartoons. And when they asked her to do My Little Pony, and she had actually watched My Little Pony when she was a little girl, and she was kind of on the fence because they do a lot of these things that are typically described as girly, and I make the analogy to Pixar. For example, in the movie Up, when he's leading the kid around, and the kid is being obnoxious, and he says, I have an idea. We'll play a game called Who Can Be Quiet the Longest? And the kid goes, oh, my mom loves that game. And Every adult in that room just bursts out laughing, even though none of the kids get that. But all the adults are like, yes, that was the perfect line with that. And it's the same thing. She said, a lot of the 4 girls shows that have a female protagonist, they're all about Barbie adventures and boys and shopping, and it's kind of sexist to say that girls can't understand plot somehow. Mm-hmm. And so she decided to dump out everything that made girly a pejorative. And she said this should be a show that the grown-ups and the parents should be able to watch too. And she completely ran away with it. It became what's called The Hub, which was before it got sold to Discovery Channel. It was their #1 show with like 10 million viewers, and it was
so essentially it was a gritty reboot.
Yes, basically, it's a gritty reboot of My Little Pony. But it did this because it had architecture and characterization and all these things, and this caught people by surprise because they were expecting My Little Pony. Right. They're like, "What is this? This is actually good. This is actually has thought behind it. What happened here?" And this attracted more and more people, especially online. And they're like, "Oh, you should watch this show." And everyone was like, "Well, this is crazy." And they're like, "No, try it, and you'll see." And they're like, "Okay," same as I did. And they watch it, and they're like, "Oh, this is a good show." So more and above just the show by itself, the people that watch it are able to set their own prejudices aside, no matter how strongly felt. Because I strongly felt, well, this is ridiculous. Right. Why would you watch a show for little girls? And I strongly felt this. And then I did an experiment, being a sciencey person. I was empirically shown that I was wrong. Right. And I was willing to change my personal opinion in light of new information. Mm-hmm. And so that same is true with a lot of the Bronies, that you eat they're able to change their minds based on new information, and that puts them head and shoulders above half the planet there.
Well, and that actually brings up a good point. We should contextualize. You're not just some random guy who got into a weird thing. You've got a massive science background.
Oh yeah.
You're going to school for it, but you should be.
I'm running a doctorate.
Right.
System science.
What's your field specifically?
System science.
Okay.
My undergrad was in computer engineering, and my master's is in data analytics. And it's all about the interaction between things that most people overlook. The example I like to give is this contra-time stoplight outside. That they timed each one perfectly, and it goes green, the requisite number of seconds, and then the other side goes green, the requisite number of seconds. The problem is they timed them each in isolation, and no one thought of timing the whole street at once. Mm-hmm. And so they're always alternating red, green, red, green, red, green, like 2 cars can get through, and it's green for several minutes while it's red on both sides, no one can get through. This doesn't work. No one realized why this wouldn't work because no one thought about the system, the big picture.
Yeah, look at it as a whole.
Mm-hmm. And so that's what I do. I do system science. I do the big picture.
That's cool. I had a few other scientists on here. I had somebody from the CDC on. There's a guy who does Google website optimization. He got really earlier on, and so he's got a lot of opinions about how all of that comes together and that sort of thing. Once they're live, I can point them out to you or send them to you or whatever you're interested. It's always interesting going down those paths because anything I don't know a whole lot about, so I always have to kind of wing the questions and see if I can figure out how to get something.
That kind of happened to me when I was doing system science because you start seeing these similarities. It's sort of a generalist field, but you start seeing these similarities between the equations and things. So you'll see the equation for water flow through a pipe is the same as traffic flow on a highway, is the same as internet flow through a website router.
Yeah, well, I think anytime
this is the same equation. They have the same bottlenecks, the same problem. And a lot of times you will see a problem that is utterly vexing some field of science has already been solved in a completely different field of science. You're like, why don't you just do that? And then it's like, okay.
Yeah, well, I think anytime you have some sort of particulate suspended in a fluid of some kind, fluid dynamics works, which is really cool. It's why you can model air with water to see or like why fish look like planes or planes look like fish.
Exactly that.
Fluid dynamics is fascinating, and I love that kind of thing. Like when you can step back and watch people coming in and out of an entrance flow out, like a liquid. So that was how the show came about, and then you watched it, and then what happened? How did you kind of get more into it, find your thing?
Well, I watched like all the episodes over the course of several weeks, and I think it actually kind of hit home for me because being the nerdy kid at all times, I never really had a lot of friends growing up. All that thing, which is the same thing that they were going through. Same thing a lot of the Bronies, I think, are going through. And it kind of hit home for me as like, oh, this is how it's supposed to go.
Mm-hmm.
The way I had it was not how it's supposed to go. This is how it's supposed to go. And I think you've seen the same thing. There was to be a thing at the conventions, BronyCon, and they had the Brony psychologists, and they had these sociologists who were actually like writing papers on the Bronies. And they had mentioned that it had this moral suasion, that it was like what would Jesus do, this is what would a pony do kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And you had that whole philosophy of that togetherness, and that we're in this together philosophy, more and above just being fans of the show like you would with the Trekkies or anything else. You have like the people who dress up as Klingons because they exemplify with the Klingons, or the Vulcans because they see themselves as Vulcans. And so you have that extra, I guess, level of self-identification above it just being a fan of the show. It's a good show. You see that, oh yeah, I hadn't thought about that before. I should think about that. And so that's what leads to that. And then I was at a convention that was nearby, was since defunct with the pandemic and everything, but I learned that there was a Bronies group nearby, so I went with the Bronies group. And it was a whole lot of people that were kind of the same way. Mm-hmm. And it was weird seeing a lot of clones of yourself, but just kind of emotional clones of yourself, I guess. For example, because we usually rent this room in the library that you can rent out for the day for nonprofit groups and for a nominal fee. And the first time we went there, they came out at the library closed at 5. You absolutely have to have everyone out of the room by 5 because they want to lock the doors and go home. And so they come in at 4:29, 4:30, and it's like, okay, you're going to have to leave in half an hour, so you need to start cleaning up. And we're like, okay, everyone, just grab whatever was next to them, the chairs, the tables, and things, and put it where they went. We were done in 2 minutes. Everything was against the wall, all the chairs put away, and it's like, oh. And even the librarian is shocked, oh, that really... So I'm sure they have to fight people. Come on, it's 4:45, come on, it's 4:55, why don't you people leave, you want to go home? But no, it's just poof, gone. So you have this kind of easygoing attitude going on.
I also imagine, when you have a place that is supportive of you, you want to take care of that. I mean, growing up in the goth scene and the clubs and things like that, and places that aren't, most of them aren't perpetually goth clubs, so you go in and do your thing, you set up and whatnot, and then when you're done, you tear it all back down. And it's like you appreciate the fact that you do have a place to go and be and just be yourself. So are there, I don't know, the best way to put it is subdivisions within the community, because, you've got all the different flavors of pony and different characters of pony.
Yes, it's kind of the thing. It's a joke. Who is best pony?
Oh, okay.
And so, because it has this ensemble cast, it's sort of like Star Trek. If you've watched Star Trek Next Generation, you have all these characters, and they all have completely different personalities. And everyone has a favorite character. The original series, it was all about kind of Kirk, and that was, Kirk did everything. But Next Generation, and then after that, you had a good 20, 30 characters, and they all had their idiosyncrasies, and they did things and were not good at things. And some shows would not even have a character in it, Their entire episodes were Captain Picard isn't in the episode, or Data isn't in the episode, usually it's because the actor was unavailable for some reason. Right. But, this is perfectly fine. The rest of the show goes on without them, and nobody really cares. I wouldn't say it's too harsh, but, they don't carry the show. There's no single protagonist. And the Ponies is the same way. You have all the main characters, and even a lot of the side characters have created these elaborate fan canons about them, and people love the guy that was on screen for 30 seconds because they really hit home for somebody. They really emotionally engaged with that pony that was on screen for 30 seconds. And part of it because it came of age during the internet era and YouTube and all that, and you had all these fan works and things coming and fan theories when that first started getting going. And so you had this kind of interactive effect in that the people who were actually making the show were doing things in response to what the fans were asking for in the show. And so characters that had a lot of fans would get larger parts. And so you had these bit part players that later became main characters. Whole episodes based around them because people fell in love with them so much.
Is the show still on the air?
Sort of. The ponies that we were, Friendship is Magic, is Generation 4. So there was the original My Little Pony back in like the 80s, and then they made a Generation 2, and then they made a Generation 3, and Generation 3 was the really girly one that Lauren Faust had a problem with. And so she rebooted as Generation 4, which was the dark and gritty version of ponies. And then that was the one that really took off. And that one ended in 2019. And then a couple years later, they released G5, which is 5th generation. And that just ended like a couple weeks back.
So,
and then they're going to have a Generation 6 in a couple years.
I would hope so. I mean, obviously the market is there for it.
Oh, yes.
And then I guess there's a lot of fan fiction and fan creating their own universes within all of this stuff.
Yeah, it's sort of become this like expanded universe, this kind of metaverse thing going on.
So you go and you meet these people, and after the initial hey, I like this too kind of conversations, you're then able to kind of start finding kinship just within the group about other things, I assume, as well.
Yeah. Part of it because they're more or less generally nice people. I mean, there's always jerks, because there's jerks everywhere.
Sure.
But most of them are genuinely nice people because, as I said, they're able to change their opinion in light of new information. And they're open-minded, and they can think about things and question things. And, they're, I guess, cleverer than flatline population on average.
Well, certainly, more open-minded. And I think anytime you find something that a group that likes the same things you do, your tolerance for them goes up because you're like, okay, if nothing else, we agree about this thing, and that's cool. So here's the part where I'm trying to figure out where to go with this. How has that influenced your life beyond just having a peer group?
It really has, actually, more so than just, being a fan of his show, because, as I said, I really didn't have it. I mean, I grew up in a very bad place, in a bad neighborhood, and it didn't work, and I was always a nerdy kid in school, and I was borderline suicidal when I was a kid, and it was hell on earth for me. And then I graduated, and I come here, and I meet the Bronies and the Ponies, and I see, oh, this is how life is supposed to go. This is how everything is supposed to work. Now I understand what all the fuss is about.
How old were you when you met him?
I guess like 25, 26, somewhere around there. I just gotten started here. I got a big boy job and all that. Right. But yeah. But it was kind of life-changing for me because of that. Because I've got to get rid of my own insecurities and my own traumas, and then just and that's, I think, kind of common to a lot of the Bronies also. More so, I mean, there are a lot of, like, normal Bronies, but I think a lot of people who've had, like, really traumatic experiences, or a lot of the Bronies have just been through so much, and they've never had a traditional Western childhood. You've had things like homelessness or abuse or things like that, or disability, and they've had, lifetime problems because of it.
Right.
And so to see this group that's very accepting and very, love and tolerate kind of thing is, it's good to have people who aren't, like, trying to kill you. Because I spent 18 years of my life in a place that was a really rough neighborhood, and at any point in time, someone would be trying to kill you. Right. And that was just considered normal. That was my entire life. And then suddenly that's not true. And to me, that's just fascinating. You know, it's like I meet people and they're not trying to kill me.
Right.
Holy crap. And I made the analogy to someone else. It's like someone who lived in a desert and their whole life revolved around water. You're like, you know, do I have enough water to get there? Where's the water near there? Do I have enough water to get home? How far can I go? How much water do I have on me? How far can I go and still make it back to the next source of water? Is there water on the way there? Is there water on the way back? And then suddenly you come to somewhere that has a tap, and you can just get water whenever you want in essentially infinite quantities. And you go, I will never have to worry about water again. You know, for the rest of my life. You know, it's, you know, to me, it's like living in a Star Trek world, and they don't use money. You're like, you don't have money. I will never have to worry about money again. You know, I will never have to worry about water again. I will never have to worry about someone trying to murder me again. And that's just such a sea change in thought. It's a quantum leap from anything I'd had before, because everything else was, you know, people are out to get me and I've got to fend for myself and blah, blah, blah. I have no allies or friends and everything is horrible. And then suddenly you have these people who are accepting and open, and then you have a real life where no one is trying to kill you. And it's just so, oh. And so it really did change my life. And I guess it's part of the process of life changing itself, because I saw all that. And now I could, you know, it's a better model of reality, I suppose, than what I was living under before.
So colloquially it's bronies, which would imply it's just guys, but I assume that it's not just guys.
Oh yeah, there's girls too. Yeah, the thing is, because when girls like ponies, that's expected. But when boys like ponies, and it's the same kind of sexism thing. Right. You know, they assume that girls can't have a show can't understand a show with a female for boys, and so any show with a female protagonist has to be dumbed down for them. And it's exactly the same thing in reverse. You're like, well, then why would someone who does have a brain want to watch such a stupid show? And it's like, because it's not a stupid show, and moreover, girls also have a brain. Just because girls watch it does not mean it's not worth watching. And it's kind of this latency. It's sort of the same thing you get, and you get a lot of this. There are a lot of transgender bronies who felt comfortable coming out in both directions because of it. You have the thing with like male nurses or child care workers, and people think this is odd in some way. And you have the same thing when you have female football players or something like that. You know, or we had this problem with computer engineering. We had one computer engineering student that was female through my entire 4-year career. And it was just insane. And this was just this latent, there's nothing obtuse, nothing obvious or essential, but it's just that it didn't happen. And the same thing with like the nursing program. You probably had one guy in the whole nursing program. You probably had one guy in the whole early childhood development program. And that's really the same sexism that you see the other way. And it reinforces the same sexism. To say that guys can't do nursing is just as damaging to both guys and women as saying women can't go into computer engineering.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Like I said, I've been part of this goth industrial subculture my entire life, and it's always been about fostering that. And every once in a while, like somebody will pop up who tries to make it, whatever their version is, and very elitist, and it's refreshing how many people will come in and like, like, no, that's bullshit. It's like. It's just, I don't know, it's something I am very protective of, that level of openness and acceptance. It's ridiculous to me that anyone is limited by something as irrelevant as the shape of their body, or, whatever it happens to be, or their taste in anything, like who gives a shit? It's what, can you do the thing? Yes. Okay. Are you intelligent? Yeah. Okay, cool. Go do it. Everything else is irrelevant. So
when I was an undergrad in college, there was a guy I was friends with who liked knitting, and he would be knitting all the time. And I had taken ballroom dance as my gym class because it counted for a gym credit. And I couldn't do most of the things that counted for gym credit. I could do ballroom dance. So I took ballroom dance as my gym credit because I could do that. And he's like trying to make fun of me for it. Like, you took ballroom dance? Oh, turn in your man card. And everyone else says, said the man who likes knitting.
Right. Our old keyboard player, when we were on tour, he would just sit in the back of the van and knit. Yeah.
And it's like, guys can do knitting.
Yeah.
The guys can do ballroom dance. I mean, you have to have two people ballroom dancing.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, it's my grandfather taught me to braid, like
Okay.
there's, yeah, it's ridiculous that, one of the weirder moments of my childhood is I remember I was in like, I don't know, first or second grade or whatever, and I was sitting there and I had my legs crossed, the way you do, just
Hmm.
like tied up against you. And I had
Yes.
some other kid come up, he's like, guys can't sit like that. You're not supposed to sit like that.
Yeah.
It's like, your dad is an asshole. I don't even think about that in those
Oh,
words.
yeah, I have the long hair myself, and
Right,
that's part of the same thing. I like having the long hair, and
right,
I don't need
yeah,
anyone's permission.
right. Yeah, but I mean, you look at that, like just the shit that people like whip on their kids at this young age, like all of these. And I've gotten into that with people online about like talking about like, I don't know, we were the greatest generation, like boomers or whoever, people worse than that, and it's like, well, okay, yeah, maybe, but these kids now can actually talk about their problems without going out and getting drunk first, or,
Yeah.
deal with an issue without getting in a fight. Like, yes, maybe they want some space.
There's another thing that the Bronies have a good lack of is this toxic masculinity that you have to punch everyone to solve all your problems.
Right.
And there's none of that. It's like, you can talk about your feelings, and I don't like this because I feel this, and everyone can talk about it and say, oh, we should be doing this the other way instead. You don't have this, oh, you said I should not stand in front of the fire exit, therefore I punch you, or something stupid like that, because,
Right, right. Yeah.
there was some musician who was interviewed for the Brony thing, and they talked about when he first learned that Bronies were a thing that existed. He remembered back when he was like 5, and he had a sister, and his sister had all these plastic horses, and he had all these GI Joes, these plastic army men, and he and his sister had the idea that they would have the GI Joes ride the horses and essentially play cavalry. And his sister would play cavalry all the time until one day their parents found them. And they were like, no, stop, stop, stop. Like they were on fire or something. Like, what? You can't play with the other gender's toys. What? Like, you can play together with anything else.
Yeah.
The blocks and everything, you can play together. But the girls cannot touch the GI Joes, and the boys cannot touch the horses. And if they did, they would be punished severely. And he remembered thinking, even as a 5-year-old, what a completely arbitrary thing to enforce.
I remember like one year I was still playing with my Star Wars toys outside. Some guy came by, like I knew it was a little bit older. He was like, oh, like 6th graders or whatever grade I was at. They don't play Star Wars anymore. And I was like, oh. And I still played with them a little bit, but that was the beginning of me kind of being like, oh, and I'm still pissed off about that.
Yeah, says who? Well, that was the thing, when I was growing up, if you liked, classical music, it would turn you gay, as if that's
Right.
how that worked. And if you liked, Star Trek, that made you a nerd. And, and it's like, this isn't middle school. I don't need anyone's permission. I can listen to classical music if I want to. I can watch Star Trek if I want to. I can watch My Little Pony if I want to. Are you going to stop me? No. I don't need your permission.
I think that's actually one of the interesting things about people in our age range, that we're one of the first real generations that was allowed to engage with popular culture as it grows. So like, I can be, I'm 53 years old and I still sit here and play video games that are modern, new, and, that sort of thing. Or I can like a franchise or whatever. And I don't think that was something that like older generations, last generations were really permitted themselves to do. It's like you were limited to, these were the things you liked when you were growing up and within a certain range, and that's where you stay, because anything newer than that and you start getting into like, oh, I don't know, feminism or like gay people, oh no, but so they're kind of stuck in that mindset. And I think that, in general, or I'd like to think anyway, that more people now are able to engage with the things that they love, even past that. Because, I don't know, I think the world would be a better place. And that's kind of what this whole podcast is about, is following those things that you love because they make you happy and they help you be a better person.
Right.
So,
and so I guess it's given me that kind of confidence, I suppose. I can do these things. And I worked at the patent office. We were all giving laptops, and they came in this laptop bag, which it looked like a purse. It looked a lot like a purse, but it was a laptop bag. It was not a purse. It had the same shoulder strap as a purse because you had to carry it over one shoulder. So it was essentially a laptop purse. Mm-hmm. All the women carried it correctly over one shoulder, well, probably alongside their purse, and they went with it, and everything was fine. The guys would not. The guys would handle it straight out like they were zombies. Brains, brains, brains. Holding it straight out like that. And they come to a door, and they have to open this door, and they can't let the laptop fall to their shoulder because then it would be a purse. So they're trying to open the door with like their elbow while not letting go of the laptop because that would make them look less masculine for a second. And it's like, you're going to break this thing. You're going to drop the laptop and break it. A $2,000 laptop. And your boss is not going to be happy about that because you can't use it correctly. Mm-hmm. Put the laptop down on your shoulder, open the door. It's like, one, everyone here has the same bag. We know it's not a purse. Two, even if they did, who cares? Someone's going to beat you up after school? What's going on? And the whole thing is...
I was thinking about that recently because they're Friends is still on. There's an episode where Joey gets this bag and he's like, it's my man bag. And they're like, no, it's a purse. And the whole story revolves around this man bag that he's carrying around, and people saying, no, it looks like a purse. And what's funny about that is this was like 1994 maybe that this episode aired, and now it's like it's a fucking laptop bag, and no one looks at that now. Like no one, it's just. It's a laptop bag. Everybody carries them. Nobody's going.
Everyone carries the same laptop bag because it's the laptop bag. It's what the laptop goes.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, it looks like a purse. But no, it's a laptop bag. Right. And it's the same kind of thing, really. And it's the same thing that's given me. It's like, I can have the long hair and the laptop bag or the knitting or the ballroom dance, the Star Trek or whatever. And, what are you going to do about it, punk?
Oh, yeah. Well, I used to walk around D.C. with bright pink dreadlocks wearing a skirt. It's just like, and it was comfortable. Like, it's a perfectly good, piece of clothing. And the only reason I stopped is I kept stepping on it. So, it's a weird... I was talking about this with somebody else on here at one point. I was like, it never occurred to me that clothing, when you're younger, there's clothing that exists. The entire point of it is that you buy it because you think it will help make you popular because it is the accepted uniform or whatever, and so even from, and hell, you can ask my mom about that, even from when I was a kid, like I was always just like, well, I like the way this looks, so I'm going to wear it. And if other people don't like it, they don't like it. And that's how it goes. I think that, so just but that had never occurred to me that I was like, oh, I can conceivably buy acceptance by getting this clothing and, wearing it. So it is nice that things like this exist that allow for that. And I imagine it's also cool for you too, because I was going to say shortcut. That's not exactly the right word, but like if you go to another city, you can find people that are probably going to be very accepting of you just by walking in.
Oh yeah, we've had that here. Like we'll go somewhere after a meetup, wearing our purple shirts and things, and someone's like, "Oh, that's a pony. That's Rainbow Dash," and everyone's like, "Oh, Rainbow Dash. Come to our meetups next time." It's the same kind of thing. I imagine that Trekkies and Star Wars and that have similar things.
Oh yeah, even just within our scene, it's kind of one of those. Like if I'm walking down the street and I see somebody wearing the uniform, I can walk up to them and go, okay, club nights are when, help me, like I want to come out to do something or whatever. So, yeah, absolutely. Have you or has the group ever received any sort of flack from the outside world because of it, or you?
Yeah, sort of the other way, sort of that too. You have people who think that there's something weird going on, and so you'll have people. No one's gotten violent to us personally, but I've heard tales of people getting actually physically violent about it, and it's like, okay. Because they think it will turn them gay or something, and it's like, what? That's not how that even works.
If you had to guess at the age range of the people that come to your club, what would it be?
They're usually about 20 to 30. Mm-hmm. Well, probably older now. When it first started, it was very firmly in like 18 to 30 age range. Mm-hmm. And so that's sort of like gotten wider as 10 years have gone by. So it's probably like, 18 to 40 now.
Mm-hmm.
But
And these are all like fully functioning adults who have like real
yeah.
jobs, and they're not just sitting around watching,
No.
or whatever.
Yeah, it's not like all basement dwellers, like the classic eating cheese doodles.
Hey, nothing wrong with cheese doodles.
Nothing wrong with cheese doodles, but that's the whole like classic nerd. Oh, I never get a job. I just sit in the basement all day and eat cheese doodles and never go outside, and I just sit in the basement 24/7 and never do anything. It's like some kind of robot, and that's not actually true. And a lot of it's kind of the opposite, because a lot of these people have overcome incredible obstacles to get where they are, and no one would have, we have people with, disabilities and things, and no one would have blamed them if they just sat in the basement and eat cheese doodles. But they come out anyway and get real jobs, and, and this helps, give them a hand up to, interact with people who will be accepting of them and say, this is, and then they can, move up with life.
It's kind of a sorority, or a fraternity rather.
Yeah.
It's I kind of like this idea of there being this pony cabal that like, secretly, like, well, we all know why we're here. We've got your job at Department of Justice now. Why don't you come in and we'll start slowly shift over the next 40 years. We'll be shifting to a more pony agenda. So I kind of like that idea. It's like the Blittenberg group, but for pony, but the pony agenda.
Ponies.
Which, honestly, I think all things considered is probably a pretty good way to go.
That would be a good way to go. I would vote for a Blindenberg pony. But yeah, that's the whole idea, is that they help one another and give confidence, and because this is the whole methodology and thought process behind the show, it actually resonates with people. So you have people who've had these disadvantages in life who are getting a hand up and can become more confident and can go out and be more adulty, I guess.
Do you also allow for confrontation in a controlled way and just being like, well, look, I don't think that's a good idea?
Yeah, we have had to ban a couple people here and there. I mean, we're not immune to the problems that any large group of people have. You're always going to have people who screw with everything, but because they're in such minority, and it kind of sticks out because of it. Because if you have a room full of people that can clear the room in 2 minutes, you have someone that's being very selfish and not like that, it becomes kind of increasingly obvious that something is not right here. And so it's kind of interesting that you have, I think the whole idea is it comes from the heart, and you have people who genuinely care for one another. They're not just doing it as an act so they can get something else in exchange. It's not a transactionalist. It's because I genuinely care about your welfare. You genuinely care about my welfare, and then so we can work together and help everybody. And that's and so especially people who are falling behind, like me when I was younger, or people who are disabled, or people who've had these backstops, can actually have a lot of emotional help to overcome these kind of obstacles and get out there and be in civilization.
Do you guys ever organize like things to help external problems, or?
There's a lot of Bronies for Good. There's a lot of charities and things that do things like that, and they usually get a lot of donations and things. There's every BronyCon that ended with a charity auction, and there'd be some charity that Bronies of Good were supporting, and they would auction off a lot of the voice actors and things for the ponies would sign things, and they would auction those off for charity, and they would raise hundreds of thousands of dollars for various charities all over the place.
Are the people who wrote it and the voice actors and things like that, I assume that they're all very cool with this.
Oh yeah. They said it's all the best parts of being famous, because you can go somewhere like BronyCon and come to a convention. It's like we become rock stars. We are famous for like 2 days. We are like the Queen of England, and everyone loves us. And oh yeah, we're great. And then we can go back to our lives, and no one knows who we are. It's been called horse famous.
Horse famous.
Horse famous. If
that's
you are a
right.
voice actor or even a head of the community in some way, you become horse famous, or if you write like a really popular fanfic or do an animation. There are a lot of like beautiful animation, like hours long
Mhm.
animation of like the same quality as you would see on television, just done entirely with fan works. And it's actually rather impressive.
Yeah, that is amazing. Yeah, I also
And
feel like that. It's like we it's like somebody once asked me, they were like, "So are you a star?" And I'm like, "Oh, in a very very small sky." You know, it's like there's decent number of people who really like what we do, and we get to go there and do our thing in front of them, and then we go home and we don't exist. You know, so
I
yeah.
don't know the bell curve.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's very bell curve. You have the people who are really into it, and you have the people who are kind of into it, and then you have everything in between. And but that's the kind of thing you have. I guess with anything.
Hmm.
But that's what I think the voice actors said that they could become horse famous and they can be the rock star for a couple of days, and they can go home and be average Joes until next year. They can come back and be rock stars again, and so they get
That's
both.
awesome. Now, I imagine even within the community, you have these people that I don't know are supportive in some way, or you get
Hmm.
these kind of momentary celebrities just for being into the thing, you know?
Yeah, yeah, they'll be crowd people, or they'll make something, or they'll program something, or they'll write something, and you have a lot of these fans, and that's kind of the thing, because it kind of rolls under its own momentum. It hits some kind of like critical mass at some point, and then it just kind of keeps going with its own momentum. And it's kind of like it's officially started by Hasbro, who made the original My Little Pony toy line, but it's kind of like escaped from their grasp.
Hmm.
It's just kind of going under its own momentum now, and they're just kind of surfing the waves to make sure they can get some money off of it. But it's not really theirs anymore as much,
Hmm.
because you have the fan canon is just so much larger than the real canon. I suppose it's like the same way with Star Trek, Star Wars. You have all these
Hmm.
extended universe kind of things.
Yeah, it makes me think a lot about like the Juggalos, you know, and like how in general, that's another one of those extremely accepting groups. It's like they're very insular. They like the things they like, and that's cool. And they're cool with you being there and whatever. I don't know. I think anytime. I don't know. I hate exclusion. I hate
Hmm.
exclusion. I hate homogeneity. Like those things just drive me nuts. They make me very angry, and because it's just culture grows when you bring other pieces of culture into it, and then we make it better, and that's what culture is. It's from everything.
Yeah,
You can't just like try and isolate yourself and say, oh well, we're keeping it pure. It's like fuck you. That's how we get inbreeding. So
yeah. There's even a Chintzy Pony song about this. I forget the details, but it's something like the rainbow reminds you, because they blast you with rainbow lasers, because that's kind
oh,
of Care Bears. As, and But the song makes a good point. Is the light comes from all of the colors.
hmm
The rainbow reminds you that together we are strong.
hmm
That each one of us has something special that contributes to the greater whole.
yeah,
And I just
absolutely.
thought that was an excellent metaphor. I mean, because
Hmm.
the rainbow was the symbol for diversity long before it was ever the symbol for gay rights.
Hmm.
Way back in like civil rights era and things, you had this kind of rainbow power thing, and you back in the hippies era and things.
Hmm.
And so you had this idea that it's a really great analogy that the white light of light is made up of all the different colors, and you need all of them to do it.
Hmm.
If one of those missing, you don't have light anymore. You have something else.
Yeah, no,
Um,
I'm all for it. I'm all for it, and it boggles my mind that people aren't. Like it's like you look at them, it's like you must be really miserable if you just are
uh,
clinging to your identity so much that you don't want other people to have the toys. So,
I made the point in a systems science class. We're talking about something about different ways of approaching a problem, and I said some problems may be easier for, say, a musician versus a general versus a mathematician versus a sculptor versus a basketball player. These people would all have completely different ideas about how to approach the problem, and there are some complex problems that may need every single one of them, and there's nothing wrong with that.
right.
You get this concept of all of these different points of view, and they give you different advantages and disadvantages to solving the problem.
Yeah, more information about the problem is never a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
Unless it becomes to the point where it's like, too much as far
Too
as
much.
you can't
Yeah, yeah.
you can't break it down, but otherwise, yeah. Well, and everybody has these, have trained themselves and built themselves to think in certain ways. Like, I do a lot of stuff with electronics, but I can't do coding for shit because I can't visualize it in my head, and everything I do is visualizing it and it's being able to see it. So, like, that's one of those stopgaps. Whereas I have friends who can literally think in code.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I have this like internal GUI.
Right.
Mom has made fun of me for it because I would look at a problem and I'm like, oh yes, and this is here. I'm just like moving things in space as if they're objects, and I'm like, oh yeah, this goes here and this goes here, and then this goes in there and it goes around here and it comes back to here. And I was like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm thinking about the problem. This is my GUI.
Yeah, like I can sit down and I can picture an entire, like, I can go through the entire process in my head of how to get a painting from nothing to full on, but like, and I know there are people like Donna, for instance. One day she came out of the bathroom, sat down at the piano, and an entire song shot completely out, finished, lyrics, music, whole thing done, and she just wrote it in her head while she was in the bathtub. And, so it's again, when you start like really limiting the people, you're limiting your pool of tools, and to make progress in the world, and as part of, look where would we be without oh hell, the guy who cracked the Enigma machine,
Oh yeah, on turn.
well, yeah, like that, what tab you insert into slot A or whatever, like, it doesn't change who you are. It doesn't change your value. It's ridiculous.
Do you know the concept of parallax in astronomy? You find the distance to a star, you see it at January and then at May, and then you see it from two different angles, and then that gives you the distance to the star. And I like that analogy when I try to explain to people why you need lots of different types of people to look at a problem. It's like, you can't just have 100 accountants look at a problem because their solution will all be the same. You need some parallax. You need some generals. You need some musicians. You need some mathematicians. You need some, scientists. You need some engineers. You need some observationalists and some experimentalists and some theoreticians. All these things.
Yeah, I mean, nobody can be an expert in everything except maybe, but otherwise, fuck that. He ruined it for everybody else. But otherwise, like, it's yeah. I mean, we have finite lives. You can only learn so much, and there's also just the humility of being able to recognize in yourself, like, look, I can't know everything, so I need to go to you for help. And here we are, I don't know. It's again, I think it's just one of those stupid, arrogant things that we are taught, or society tries to do, is, tries to push as a control mechanism for people. Like, well, you need to be able to do all these things to be a human or a man or an adult or whatever. And it's like,
specialization of labor for a reason.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I don't know how my car works. I make the car. Can you make car go? The car doesn't go. Make it go. But I'm the same with the computer. You give me a computer, and I'm like, oh, no, this came loose to here, and it needs to go here, and you need more of these, serial ATA cables. And I'm good with that, And so if you're like, how do you make computer go? Make computer go. And that's the same thing. It's the same problem reversed.
Yeah, well, like, Donna and I do well with as the machine for our touring, because she's the one who sits down, figures out all the routing, how long it's going to take for us to get from here to here. If there's a problem with the van, she can probably diagnose it and then get it fixed. I don't deal with any of that shit, but I can make sure all of the gear and all of the music equipment, we have all those things are all doing what they're supposed to be doing. So that way, neither of us is completely overwhelmed by all the logistics of it. So,
and you need that. You need all of the colors of the rainbow to make all the light.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I do think that maybe we are incrementally, as a country, as a species, whatever, moving towards that, current events notwithstanding. The more people that you talk to, the more people really seem to get that, unless they have been in these really isolated communities. And I don't know. It just seems like such a fundamentally obvious thing. So, So are there?
There's another thing I like about hanging out with the Bronies because they've, seen so many cosmopolitan things. They've seen so many different things that were utterly that they thought were wrong, and then turned to find out they were right. And, it's like, oh, it's okay to like the ponies, and so they're more accepting of these kind of new ideas, and so you have this kind of cosmopolitanism that you can jump from one idea to another, and acceptance of new ideas, and say, oh, I didn't know how that worked. And so they're more willing to hand off things like that.
And it's great that this has been in existence for 20 years or something.
2010 I think is when G4 was released,
and it still maintains that open-mindedness.
Mm-hmm.
So are there kind of other groups that are adjunct to this that maybe like spin out of it or spin onto it or?
I know spin off is probably the wrong term. It's kind of like an osmosis, kind of like a diffusion.
Yeah.
Because it kind of like diffused with the furry fandom when it first started. There's a lot of crossover there, but a lot of civil warring over there too. And same with the anime. I guess a lot of the little nerd culture things with the Trekkies and everything. Doctor Who. There's a pony named Doctor Who's.
Of course.
At first, it was sort of like this secret that they'd have him run back and forth. It looked exactly like David Tennant, and every pony gets a little symbol like a Care Bear, and his was an hourglass because he was the Time Lord. They didn't call him Doctor Who's for years because they didn't want to get into trouble with the BBC, so they called him Time Turner. And so, but he was always in a lot of the fan things because he was Doctor Who's.
Right.
And so apparently the actual BBC caught wind of this. And they started featuring Doctor Who's in the clips between Doctor Who episodes when they do their marathons. And so it went full circle. And so now they call him Doctor Who's an actual publication. And he actually has speaking lines and actually points the other ponies to things. And he's the scientist person that comes around sometimes. And he actually has this quasi-major part. And so you have this kind of fusion with a lot of the other fandoms that you have the anime and the furries and the Doctor Who and less so I guess the Trekkies and the Star Wars, but it's the same kind of idea of nerd culture. They made a collectible card game like Magic the Gathering, and that had a lot of things go both ways because we started playing at the card shops, this pony game.
Right.
And a lot of people got interested in ponies from the card game.
Right.
So they came to the card shop to play Magic the Gathering or Pokemon or something, and they wound up becoming Bronies because they found it at the card game. It's like, okay. And then you have diffusion the other way. People would start playing the card game, and they meet all these Magic the Gathering and Pokemon players, and so they start doing Magic the Gathering and Pokemon and all those things. And Bluey is big now, which is a cartoon from Australia.
I've become aware of that. And so that's like it's a kid's show with like...
It is a kid's show. And it's not actually a kid's show. It's not as deep as the Ponies is.
Like I was, I certainly have an appreciation for Blue's Clues, but that's a different sort of thing.
Yeah, that's a different thing.
Yeah, like no, yeah. I just.
But it has the same wholesomeness, I suppose. It has the same wholesomeness, I suppose.
Yeah.
Bluey does.
Oh, no, Blue's Clues is awesome, man. Steve was the man. So yeah, like I grew up on Sesame Street and all that stuff, Mr. Rogers. So I'm just a big fan of people that are able to create something like that. That just exists to teach people, and it's just a good thing,
Yes.
I think it's nice that, and I guess the trend continues that the people that will be doing, I guess the fifth generation of this, I hope that they really do engage with you guys. Because it makes me very sad when I do see like about any fandom or franchise or whatever. If you get into it and then you go online and you like people try and make it this thing that they own. And it's about
they try to possess it.
Yeah, like the Star Wars people are just awful.
Oh yes.
And a lot of the video game franchises and things like that. It's not exactly what I want, therefore it's bad. I'm like, fuck you.
Yeah. It's all this gatekeeping. You see that a lot with the superhero things. And like I mentioned before, with they trying to exclude women and things, they'll have, women can't like superheroes. Why? It's like, well, you're not the gatekeeper of superheroes. They could like superheroes even, they don't need your permission.
Right.
And it's the same kind of thing, and it's kind of weird.
Yeah, particularly when the entire point of so many of those superheroes is that inclusion, is that women can do this. Obviously we've got all of these female
Tried
characters.
not being a mutant.
Right.
In X-Men, that was one of my favorite lines. Because that was just so on point.
Hmm.
It's like, yes, we have all tried not being a mutant. It doesn't work.
Yeah. I like, and it's just, and even if you aren't, even if it's like, like one of the weirder interactions I ever had, and it was a good one, but this guy just stopped me in a rest room on tour, and he was like, "Why do you dress that way?" And I just turned to him, and he'd been polite about it, and I was like, "Well, when you get up in the morning, and you look in the mirror, and you make yourself look the way you look in your head. That's all I do." And he got it, which was very cool.
Yeah.
But it's just like, it's an interesting thing to me that uh, there's any question about that. I think maybe there are people that don't think they can do that. Like
They have permission. They have to wear exactly the same suit and tie every day. And
right,
have their hair exactly the same way and be robots and be exactly the
right.
best.
Yeah, yeah, and like again,
There's a
that's one of
template
the reasons
somewhere.
I've been doing this is because I as I got into it, and if like a X number of interviews in, I remember just thinking about what an amazing thing, how many of these people that do this stuff, and one of the defining things has always been within the people I've talked to, they have come back to, well, an opportunity was presented to me. I realized I didn't know everything about the thing, but I wanted to do it, so I did it. And I think that there's such everybody wants to have that control over like all of your choices, and you have to know everything about this, go and do it or whatever. And
It
and
requires a certain amount of reaching out,
mhm,
where your grasp, what was it? Your reach exceeds your grasp.
mhm.
I think is the phrase.
Yeah, yeah, and like so many of the opportunities that I've had in my life have just been kind of, oh well, okay, this thing just fell in my lap. I can either throw it away or I can actually run with it, and hope it works. And most of the
I
time,
think a lot of people are afraid to run with it. I think this
yeah,
comes from childhood
hmm,
because when I was in school, everything had to be perfect. It was very like mathematical, analytical. 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1, and you can't make a mistake. That was the one unforgivable sin, was to make a mistake.
right,
Everything had to be perfect. It had to be exactly like the example in every way. Neat handwriting. All the letters had to look exactly like the teacher's letters. The letters can't look any different, otherwise it's sloppy handwriting, and we won't accept it. You got to start over again. It's only got to be perfect, otherwise you got to do it over again until it is perfect. And perfect isn't a thing.
right,
There is no perfect. And this entire philosophy, I think, is just going down the wrong track entirely. That everyone, they're trying to say you have to be perfect, and then they set up a template. This is the perfect, and everything has to look exactly like this perfect. And then everyone else is like, yes, I must look exactly like that perfect. And then anything that deviates from the perfect is wrong, and it has to be corrected. It's like Gollum, the precious. This is the precious.
well, I think it's again. Hopefully, this is something that is changing. As although I do see periodically Gen X people doing really stupid shit, and I'm just like, you're turning into your parents. This was something you were pushing against, and now you're doing it. But but I think is a lot of people changing who are no longer trying to live out vicariously through their kids, or to keep them from you know yeah, you have to do this thing exactly right, or I'm not going to love you, or whatever the bullshit.
Yeah.
You
You
know.
have to have the courage of self-determination to say, I am not sure this is going to work, but I'm going to try it anyway, just to
Oh yeah,
see
well, I
what will
mean,
happen.
that's how you learn. And
Yeah, that's how you do science, You can't do any science if you just sit at home and don't do anything.
yeah, and that was this guy that I was talking to, my professional hacker buddy. We were talking about that, and he was, saying, I think that was that conversation. But it's the idea that failure isn't failure unless and even if you fail at something and then you decide, okay, I just don't want to do that. That's not even failure because you've learned that you don't want to do the
I
thing.
won't do that next time. I'll do it a
Right.
different way.
Or I think the only time you can have like a quantifiable failure is like, oh, that structure failed, it fell apart.
It fell down.
Like the
Yeah.
entire point of that structure was not to do that, and it just did that. So yeah, that failed it. But if it's you, almost every, I failed my driving test at I grew up in D.C. in Virginia, so I biked or took the metro everywhere. So I didn't learn to drive until I was like 45. I failed my
Oh,
driving
wow.
test like three fucking times. So
I failed mine the first time.
yeah, you just go and you learn and you do it again,
Yeah.
and like so what? Like it does. It's not
Yeah.
like you've got a big scarlet F on your shirt now because for all of the time.
I grew up thinking that. For so long, for my 18 years of my life, I learned if you made a mistake, you were doomed, and everyone hated you. And that was never do that, never do any of that. And then suddenly it's not, and I'm like, oh, this is better, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, and learning to do that for yourself. I know this guy who, like, I've watched him berate himself because he couldn't do something he was trying to do, and he would just sit there talking. You're stupid. You're just like running through this litany of shit that his parents had taught him. Had forced down his throat. That's like, if you don't do this, you're a horrible person. It's like that's I don't know. That's just such an awful thing. And I mean, like, and it sucks for his parents that they had to deal with it. And it sucks.
Yeah.
They're continuing it down this tradition of, I'm going to destroy my
cycle of abuse almost.
Yeah.
There was a thing in anime. It was the line, you don't believe in yourself, I believe in you, and you believe in me. So you believe in me, who believes in you. Mm-hmm. That was a great concept.
That's what friends are for, like friendship is magic and all that.
Yeah, exactly. Friendship is magic.
Like, I have never had copious friends over my life. I usually have like one friend in these time periods, and I'm kind of fortunate.
Up until recently.
I'm kind of fortunate that I have more than that. But ultimately, like, my buddy Nathan, he lives in Atlanta, and it's one of those things where if either of us had an issue, we would both be on the plane going down or coming up or doing whatever, you need to support your friend, even if it's something like, well, I know you want to do this, and I think it's a really dumb idea, but I'm going to support you doing it. Or even my marriage, for that matter. With that, your marriage is. Somebody said marriage is watching your partner do stupid things and being supportive of it. So it's.
I imagine parenthood is very similar.
I would imagine.
You have this child who is going to burn themselves, and you're like, don't burn yourself on the stove. And then he does it anyway, and you're like, I told you not to do that. Right. Why did you do that?
Well, I mean, that's you gotta learn. Like it takes an awful lot, even as an adult, to internalize a warning that somebody gives you. I mean, look at where we're at now. Internalize a warning versus just learning it firsthand, and that sucks.
Take it seriously.
It's where the whole rock bottom thing hits with people who have problems, where it's just like, look, eventually you're not going to change until you get to this place where you cannot blame anybody other than yourself, and that sucks. But that's sometimes that's what it takes.
It's necessary. I read a comic book series once called The Guards of Archelon. And it's about, essentially, spacefarers crash on this planet called Archelon, and they're considered gods by the local population. And so they go about, oh, we can fix everything. Because you have all these kings and, bad people, conquering the weak. And he's like, we'll make it a democracy, and everyone can vote, and we'll solve all the problems and cure all the diseases, and blah, 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 blah. And they fix everything, and it doesn't work, and they can't fathom why. And finally, one of them comes up with this brilliant idea. You can't do all of it for them. They've got to do it for themselves.
Yeah.
They've never learned how to solve their own problems, so they can't do it. As soon as you leave, it all just collapses because they don't know how it works.
Right. Yeah, I mean, also, like, who is to judge what system is better than the other? You can come in and meet some tribe or whatever, and then go whip Christianity on them, and it's like, but they were just fine. Like they were there for thousands of years.
Yeah, before you came along, and it was fine for them.
Yeah, and they were perfectly content. You came in and whipped God on them, and now well, first of all, they all got sick and died, but also, like.
It's like when they would kidnap Indian children and try to raise them in Western schools because they would civilize them, so they would have modern medicine. And it's like, yeah, but no, no. A friend of a friend went to Japan, and what was it like when he came back? And he's like, in a sentence, kind of odd, but really good. And the thought came to me, that's like every foreign country to every other country. Because it works for them. Because if it didn't work for them, they wouldn't be doing it.
Right.
So it obviously works for them. And it's going to seem different than the way one ordinarily does things, because your country does things a different way, and the other country, and that's fine. And so if anyone from any country goes to any other country, it's going to be kind of odd, but it still works for them.
Right, yeah.
So I think that's a really good concept. You know, if someone from there comes to here, they'll say, "Oh, this place is really odd, but still good."
Yeah, I mean, you have to look at it within the context of the entire culture. It's like just because it's different doesn't mean it's wrong or whatever. And like one of my very favorite adages or pieces of wisdom was from George Carlin. He was like, "It's totally fine to give the natives shoes, but you can't nail them on their feet." And
good line.
Yeah, it's one I've held on to, and it's one of those things that you just I think it's so important. It's like here like what made me think about it was the kidnapping of the kid. Like you don't need, like, if you want them to have modern medicine, you can just go and give them modern medicine. You don't have to kidnap them and advise them in order to give them that. It's like, it's there. You can just take it and go over there.
Go, here you go. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so it's I think going into it with this assumption that what you're doing is
right, and what they're doing is wrong, and you've got to convert what they're doing to what you're doing.
Yeah, and of course it isn't about that. It's really just kind of like, here, this is our excuse because we want your shit.
Yeah, basically
we want your land. So we're going to civilize you, by which we mean take all of the things that you have and we're going to take
give them to us.
yeah, and now it's civilized.
It's kind of a rationalization for the theft.
Yeah.
After the fact.
Yeah, I don't know. It's I like I said, I just hate the whole isolation thing. Like I've got this concept record that I'm finishing up now, and part of the story revolves around these isolationists who are trying to split the country and to different races and stuff, and they're just like, okay, well they take it a step further and like, okay, we are destroying all of the radar installations and SETI installations, and we are going to isolate the planet from the rest of the universe. So like, yeah, it's insane to me that people think that that's how you make things better. Like, look, I don't know. You don't get Coke without a whole bunch of different chemicals. You don't get, there's very few things that are just pure that work. So, excellent. Well, is there anything that you would like people to know about this that I haven't covered?
I think that's about it. I know there's a Zen cone that says something like, "The river carves the canyon not through strength but through perseverance." And that's always resonated with me. Is, you keep going, and eventually, it kind of goes. And you keep trying things, and then eventually you get to the other side. And it's sort of the antithesis of the whole, be the perfect ideology, because that's not how it works. If you're doing it perfectly every time, in my opinion, you're not doing a hard enough thing.
Yeah, exactly. And even with that river analogy, what might be perfect for one path of that, that's going to change the landscape. And so the next time you go through, it's going to have to be different. It's going to have to be different. So you always have to be flexible in order to keep moving forward and keep growing, keep pushing things.
In the last episode of Star Trek, Q says to Captain Picard, if you can't handle a bloody nose, you can always go home and hide under your bed. Yeah, one of those things I always tell people about, like, just trying to, going out and doing whatever the thing is you want to do. Like, look, nobody on their deathbed ever is lying there and going, well, I may not have accomplished anything, but at least I was comfortable. Like I can't imagine that. Yeah, like it's I don't know. I think that the more you force yourself into these situations, you're going to learn more. It's diversity changes you. Adversity changes you, and forces you to figure out how to solve problems. And in the Rainbow Song, there's a second verse, and it says, "Each one of us will sometimes stumble. We may each one of us will sometimes falter. We may stumble. We may fall. But there will always be others that will help us through it all." And I thought, yes, that is exactly, because that's essentially what happened to me. You have this, and it just isn't working. And then you find this, oh, now I understand how it works. And so now it is working. But you don't do that by just going on your one path perfectly every day. You do that by interacting with all the other colors and becoming something that is greater than yourself, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of like the idea that you have song and verse to quote from this. I feel like a little white square here and be like, today is the fifth letter from Fluttershy to So
I know a lot of places will do like copyright claim things. You actually sing a song. It's just kind of YouTube does things like that. So I don't know how that's going to work. But if you can look up the actual song, it's actually very impressive. Let the rainbow remind you.
Rainbow. That's awesome. Yeah, like I don't think that's going to be like unless you're like playing it and singing it or whatever. But I don't think quoting a few lines from it's going to be enough.
Yeah, but I thought that was a very poignant remark because you can't do everything perfect all the time. That's just not a possibility. And this whole expectation that it's supposed to be is just wrong. It's empirically wrong, and we need to stop doing it.
What are the antagonists in the show? Are there antagonists, or is it just?
Oh, there are villains. A lot of times, it's very situational. Though you have, there's a comment. It's like, we started out fighting monsters, and now we're fighting bureaucracy. And then another funny says, "Well, bureaucracy is the ultimate monster."
Right. Well. Everybody gets stuck up in that.
Yeah. Because it kind of started. Because it kind of took some time for that feedback cycle to develop, because especially the first couple seasons are fairly fun. There's a monster attacking, we go stab it, and now this monster is defeated, and we go home. And then, as it goes along, there's a lot more interplay between the things, especially as you add more characters, and then you start having interplay between the characters. They'll disagree about how to proceed, and things will happen, and so you'll have this kind of epic storytelling happening with ponies.
I mean, why not? Like, look at Lord of the Rings. We got hobbits. I mean, it's judge me by my size, do you? I mean, I think that's huge. It's So I imagine there's a lot of the antagonists being misunderstood or not understanding and causing problems because of that. And then once they get it all worked out, then we can all.
Yeah, but I like how they also do the opposite. You have antagonists that cannot be redeemed, and I think that's important too, because it's important to know that there are people who are just going to do that, and there's nothing you can do about it. You just have to rainbow laser them a couple times until they go away.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely true, and it's.
But the thing is, a lot of it is just because a thing is wrong, and and so you have to realize, this is the thing that is wrong. You have like a north, south, east, west. Why are they at war? Well, they're at war because of some reason. It's not like someone had a comment. It was it wasn't ponies, something else. But it's like people aren't driven by this desire to perform evil. We're not all wearing bowler hats and twirling our mustaches and tying them into the railroad tracks like in an old black and white cartoon. That's not how this works. People do things for some reason. And if you want to target why these people do these things, you have to target that reason. It's a very cause and effect thing. And so I think that's also very open-mindedness, that they're like, well, why is it happening this way? And let's see if we can't find the real reason and target that reason. And usually it works out if you do that, which I think is very important to real life. And I think this idea of calling that childish does a disservice to the absolute point that is how problems are permanently solved.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
You don't solve a lot of problems by punching them. You can't punch a virus, for example, with COVID and everything. You can't punch. There was an interview with some 3-star general, and he was talking about the difference between the first Gulf War and the second Gulf War. And he had this beautiful Texan accent. It's like, in the first Gulf War, Iraq attacked Kuwait, and our mission objective was to make Iraq stop attacking Kuwait. And the procedure for achieving this mission objective is very clear. You fly over Kuwait, and every time you see something in Kuwait that does not belong in Kuwait, you drop a bomb on it. And you continue this until you destroy everything in Kuwait that does not belong in Kuwait. It's a very simple, clear mission objective. Second Gulf War. Our mission objective is to make everyone play nice. It is challenging
Yes.
to figure out a way to achieve this mission. He's not trying not to like blame anyone in particular, his superiors, because he's a 3-star general after all. It's very challenging to achieve this mission objective. It is not immediately clear what steps need to be taken to achieve this mission objective. You can't bomb people nice. I can't fly a plane over someone and drop a bomb on it until it's nice. And we don't know when the mission objective has been achieved. If an Iraq's invasion of Kuwait, there is nothing of Iraq's in Kuwait. We have achieved this mission objective. Make everyone play nice. When have we achieved this mission objective? It is very challenging to achieve this mission objective. And I love that interview. It was so perfect. It described utterly what the problem was.
Right.
Because that is not a problem that has a military solution.
Right.
You cannot solve that problem with a general. It is not possible. And we're treating it like it is. Like if you just bombed hard enough, it would just occur as if by magic. And suddenly it's not. And
Bombs are not magic.
no. Friendship is magic, but bombs are not magic.
Exactly. Thank you for
But that's the idea. So we have this idea that we can somehow punch a virus, like the war on poverty, the war on drugs, the war on this and that. And it's like war on terror. It's like, no, these are abstract concepts. You cannot bomb an abstract concept like
ultimately it's almost as if, like the problem is that people just can't live content lives because of other bullshit and they act out, like, hey, maybe if we could, have everybody, be able to eat or have shelter, things like that, maybe these problems would start to go away.
But the problem is you're using the wrong ideonym. You're using the ideonym of a war to solve the problem, and you can't solve this problem with the war.
Right. Yep, exactly.
And so I think that's why I like that Ponies exemplifies that, and that it's not childish to say, hey, we need to solve the actual problem and not just its symptoms.
Right.
And I like how it's adult enough also to say sometimes these people are villains and they're irredeemable, they just need to be wiped off the map. And sometimes it's one and sometimes it's the other.
Yeah. Damn, I had a thing I was going to say and I lost it. Clever too. Oh well. Right on. Well, I remember. So normally when I end these, I'm always like, well, okay, people want to find you. How would they find you? But that doesn't seem like it'd be the right thing to do with this particular thing. So if you were, what advice would you give to people who watch this and go, hey, this sounds really cool, and I would like to find more people like that? How would they go out and find?
I know the DC Bronies is the Brony chapter for DC. I know there's lots of other ones all over the place. I think a lot of it is just, it's not necessarily a place that you go to. It's more like an ideology, a thought. That the show, especially if you watch like the first several episodes and you see, the interaction between people, and you say, especially for people who have been the nerdy one and have had no friends, it's like, oh, yeah, I see where this is going. This makes sense to me. I think it's that ideology more than anything, than a particular object.
I like, one of my favorite Buddhist ideas is dealing with the problem of what was actually said by Buddha and what was not. And the Buddhists have this really great system for that. They're like, well, if it sounds like something the Buddha said, then he said it.
I like it.
And I think that there are a lot of like correlations with just the ideas, the ideology that kind of floats along with the show. It's just like, well, it doesn't really matter if it's canon or not, as long as it works with, as long as it obeys the, friendship is magic rule of, the core principles of it, which is pretty cool.
I've heard, I don't know if it's apocryphal or if it actually happened. I'm told that Mahatma Gandhi, was talking with the Pope, and he said to the Pope, I love your Christ, but I do not like some of your Christians.
Yeah.
They're so much unlike your Christ. He loved the ideology of Christianity, of loving thy neighbor and everything. He loved that. He was absolutely 100% with that. And then you have all these people like, oh, televangelists, God says you should send me all your money. No. God did not tell you to send your money.
My stepbrother is is a MAGA person, or at least he was.
Okay.
And it's fine. We don't spend a lot of time interacting with each other. But at one point, I wrote him, and I was like, I don't understand this because we went to the same church when we were kids, and your God is not the Jesus that from that church because we were raised Lutheran. And, with Lutheran church, like Jesus is a cool guy.
Yeah.
And, like I like a lot of those. I'm not Christian, but I think it's great. They're all good ideas. Love people, don't be a dick. Cool.
Yeah.
And like the whole, this idea that the God of the universe and his child are exclusionary to people that he made just seems fucking stupid. And so like I hate what people have taken this simple idea, love is cool.
Take an idea of loving people and you turn it into a reason to murder other people.
Right.
Except, no.
Even your
that's
enemies,
not the
right?
same thing.
Yeah, like accept all of these things.
It's exceptionally bizarre because they pancake on top of each other. Because the Old Testament is the Jewish version of the Bible.
Right.
And then you have the New Testament on top of that. And then the Muslims have a third book on top of that. And so they're all worshiping the same God.
Sure, yeah.
The same monotheistic God of the Jews and the Christians and the Muslims are all the same God. And so you have this idea that God wants me to kill you for worshiping him wrong?
And something I for people watching, I want to be clear. Some of my best friends are Christians. Well, my best friend used to be an Anglican minister, and in the most punk rock thing I've ever known, went, I don't agree with what you guys are teaching, and I'm going to leave now. And so went and did his own thing. So like, I don't care if you worship watermelons if it makes you a better person.
Yeah.
And a lot of Christians are amazing, wonderful people. And so I am certainly not, and Muslims.
Oh, yeah, same. It's a great ideology. I'm just saying you shouldn't murder people.
yeah, exactly. Like if that helps you be a good person, gives you that focus or whatever, I'm fucking all for it, man. Just maybe less exclusionary would be really cool. So, excellent. Well, thank you, Tony, so much for doing this. And I know you're getting ready to turn in your dissertation or something to that effect.
Yeah, we're doing final projects.
Yeah.
Semester coming up.
Well, excellent. Well, that's very, very cool. I really appreciate this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good night.
You too.